What is up, NFL fans? It's your boy, Kevin Phillip Fox here with the Legit Football NFL podcast. And you guys all already know it's my favorite episode of the year. We are doing our Legit Football off-season darling episode. Last year, we had the forecasting of the Houston Texans breakout. We had some less stellar takes, but, I like to showboat that one in case you didn't already know that. Regardless, I'm not here alone. I couldn't do this episode alone. It's all about the community. It's all about the friends. It's all about the family. Adrian Revito, our man from down under. Here he is with some new theme
Back in your music?
I like it.
It was actually meant for you, and I panicked because
Let's iron that out, Adrian, because this music's really cool, and that would have really juiced me up.
I was gonna say it was meant for you, but the reason I didn't, I was actually playing around with my screen, and then I panicked.
It really juiced me up. Nobody finds royalty-free music better than Adrian Revito, and that is just an absolute promise.
Well, if you want to hear the secret to that one, actually, I got a new subscription via my work, who don't know this yet, for some royalty-free stuff that is a little bit better, a little bit more,
Nice.
a little bit more like that. So I'm happy with that.
Should you not be admitting that on the pod, or is it because like you're in America, so you're like this isn't their jurisdiction?
The laws can't touch me. The laws can't touch me. What are they going to do?
All right. Well, regardless, we're not alone, actually, believe it or not. And as much as I'd love to say NFL Stats Jimmy Ray is joining us, I kind of have a little bit of a flex here because NFL Stats Jimmy Ray is on vacation. We miss him terribly. We're wishing him well. But we have, with all 22, Chris Lombardi here joining us. He's a first-time Legit Football guest. Chris, welcome in.
What's up, guys? Dude, the intro music absolutely is getting me juiced. It's like a walkout song in baseball. Fantastic.
I'm not saying that it's the best music that's ever happened, but that's for other people to say. By the way, comments are going ham already. Can we just throw a few up?
We got to catch up. Yeah. Shout out to 49ers Faithful Forever, one of the GOATs. Shout out to Armand. Armand, we couldn't do this without you, honestly. If you weren't here, I was going to hold the show. I was going to hold the curtain for you, but you're here. And we have Titan Maximum. Better be the Titans. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
I have a request before we kick this off.
Yeah, of course.
But Kevin, it's a request from you, and you're going to find that a bit weird to begin with. And pre-warning, we didn't discuss this earlier. I'm going to need you to close your eyes for a second.
Okay,
keep them closed till I tell you. Okay. All right. For anyone watching, graphic on the screen right now. I'll leave it up for a second. All right, it's gone. Feel free to put it in the comments. I will explain to Kevin at the end of the show. Let's kick it off.
That's fantastic.
What did I miss?
It's so good.
I'm so confused.
Chris, you got a pick on that? We're already on one.
I'm hard over.
Yeah. Thank you, 49ers.
All right, guys. This doesn't feel very great, but I like it, though. Adrian's a clever guy. That freaking smug grin of his.
Oh, I'm loving it already. And there's so many overs. I agree. Anyway, sorry, continue, Kevin.
What are we doing here?
Nothing has happened.
You know what, Adrian? I'm doing this to you next week. I'm doing this to you freaking scab.
This is one of the scab producer. This is one of the benefits of it doing it.
I'm here for it. Whatever it is, I'm just going to steer into it. I'm just going to be extra me today so that all the overs can hit and everybody can cash. I love making people money, so let's go.
Let's do it.
All right.
Do we want to kick off some news?
We got some headlines. Yeah, we got some news to get to. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about, we're mainly talking about it because Jimmy's not here. If Jimmy was here, being the Colts fan that he is, he would just shut it down immediately. We probably wouldn't have even got this segment off of the cutting room floor, but here we are regardless. Multiple reports of Anthony Richardson struggling. I don't know what to think about this, you guys. I personally don't really care myself. It's preseason, it's training camp, whatever. I think he's got the tools. I think he's got the traits. I think he'll be an excellent player for the Colts this year. I've seen things that I liked. I liked the flashes. A bad preseason game or a couple bad practices don't really scare me off of Anthony Richardson, especially for fantasy football. For whatever that's worth, I'm still buying when I can. If he falls to me in drafts, I'm taking him wherever he's at. How do you guys feel about this?
I'm probably more worried about the joint practice than preseason. I agree with you. You don't have your best out there. You're not having your best, your best plays are not called. The people that should be open are not open. And he did throw, I believe, a pick 6 in the preseason. But the joint practice he went, and I've got it here, 10 of 20 with a touchdown and an interception against Bengals defenders. They were hammering him. There was tweets after the fact that he's not passing the ball and just running. I don't know. It's hard because we got flashes of him, and he's definitely got the talent. He's got the skill. We've seen him run. Athleticism is well documented, but it worries me a little bit. I will say that because accuracy during college was never his strong suit. That's something you want to see improve in the NFL. And I don't know, just not. I'm not gonna say it's not doing it because we're not in the season yet, but it's based off practices, joint practices, and preseason. A bit concerning.
And Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned a little bit. It's hard because we just saw Trey Lance and what he became, right? So everybody's been seeking this dual threat all-star quarterback that's just looks like a Greek god, and it doesn't really always work out, right? Which is concerning. But there's also the Josh Allen side of the conversation where just because a guy struggles for a year or two doesn't mean when the right head coach gets there that it doesn't take off. I think Shane Steichen's fantastic. So I'm going to buy in still.
Yeah, it's tricky because it's like I think for a while there was that era where like it almost seemed like mobile quarterbacks had a weird like stench on them coming out of college for a long time. And now in modern NFL, it's like they have that it factor. They have that this is the modern NFL. This is what we're going for. And so they almost get propped up a little bit, it seems, in the draft process. Like if you have a little bit of mobility, if you have the ability to run or scramble, like you sort of get a little bit of a plus. It used to be different. And everybody was chasing the Allen, or sorry, the Manning and the Brady. But now people, you're right, are chasing the Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, can create off platform, can run. Yeah, I don't personally. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared off of Richardson. That's just how I feel. I'll say that with my chest. I think he'll be fine. I always say it's better. Like offseason reports, it's the good stuff you have to take with a grain of salt. I think you also have to take the bad stuff with a grain of salt too.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, coming out of the draft, he was the project guy. Like he was the guy that was like probably not polished enough for the sport, but he's got the athleticism and he needs work. So he missed most of his rookie season. You're probably right that he'll be okay. But I just think like if you're gonna, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm not saying that like I'm peeing the bed, but I'm sweaty. Like I'm just, you wake up, you're a little bit. I need to dab my forehead.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Raw is the word I was thinking of.
I just think he'll still win games. Like I don't know. Like they were a 9-8 team with Gardner Minshew last year. Like I think Anthony Richardson is better than Gardner Minshew, even with struggles, right? Like that's where I rest on it. So, Chris,
are you factoring in mustache? Did you
Um,
factor in the mustache? I don't think you did.
You know what? If I factor in mustache, it's it does give Gardner a little bit of a spike.
Yeah.
But not enough of a spike to overcome because I think AR is pretty fresh too. I think AR is pretty swaggy personally.
For sure. The only thing is that I'll just kind of point out, right? Like traditional fantasy football, yes, he's probably going to be fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But if you are an all 22 player, I got to do like my little plug. If you do all 22 fantasy football, we use PFF grading instead of traditional stats. And it is a little concerning. He is so raw. You're not going to get the same output that you would in traditional fantasy. So proceed with caution in all 22.
And so happy that he got to do that plug because I don't know if you guys know this, but All 22 is a relatively new. I know it was around last year. I've been in it. This is going to be my second season, but it's a really cool fantasy football platform. And we'll definitely give Chris a chance at the end of the show to just gush about it. But in the meantime, I'm just here to say I'm signed up and I absolutely love it. So Adrian, what about you? Are you signed up or what's up with that?
It's literally open in my other. It's on my other browser. Australian resident, citizen.
Yeah,
see, you know what the problem is, and I knew this was coming. As soon as you mentioned Josh Allen, Kevin was going to be all over you, and I was
you know what's crazy? Now. You know what's crazy? I'm hesitant to do anything pro Bills because of this whole over under thing. So I'm like I don't want to like steer into it or anything, but yeah, no, I hesitated busting out my box. It's not Bills.
You can be yourself. It's not a Bills related problem.
Well then, yeah, Josh Allen's the GOAT. Okay, cool. Let's keep it moving. We have a couple more things to talk about before we get to our main segment of the day. Jamar Chase may be willing to hold on into the season, and I'm gonna let Chris take the lead on this one because I waxed poetic about Anthony Richardson. But before I do, I just have to say, Chris, Adrian and I have weekly, it feels, bemoaned these diva wide receivers, and I'm not surprised that we're having to do it again. And I'm so sick of it. And that's all I got. I don't know if I'll say another word on the matter. Go ahead, Chris.
This one hurts, man. This one hurts because he is the fantasy darling that everybody wants, right? And he is the stud. He's the team stud. The Bengals haven't had a healthy roster. Burrow was out last year. They were saying this is the year the team's going to be back together and they're going to go for it. But I think it might be true that he might hold out the entire year because people forget that Jamar Chase was the guy that didn't play his junior year of college. He held out, didn't play his junior year of college, and then was drafted, right? Like, he's not afraid to do that. He might do that. And it also, I think, it's an attempt to change the landscape. I think running backs have been trying to do it. Now we're seeing some receivers try to do it where they think that they deserve to be paid earlier because the toll that the game just puts on their bodies, right? They don't last as long as they used to. They're playing more games now, so they probably won't last as long-term either, just because of that one extra game every year. So they're saying, I don't want to wait 4 years to get paid. Give me the payday after 3 or after 2. It's concerning, but I think this is going to be a trend, not a rare occasion.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And honestly, like, so the reporting came from Adam Schefter. So it's not nobody. It's not like Joe Nobody reporting it. All the points you make are very relevant. His numbers right now are 4.8 million. So here's a couple of receivers making more than Jamar Chase right now.
Oh, God.
Devin Duvernay, Mac Wilson, Jameson Williams, Josh Reynolds, Chris, and then the names start to get a bit better. But like, the point being that, like, 4.8 million, Noah Brown is making 4 million. DeMarcus Robinson is making 4 million. I can understand why the guy wants to get his bag. I do think they'll get it done, though. This is, I think, the part that we bemoan most, Kevin, is it's like, just get it done. Like, just pay the guy. CD Lamb, just pay the guy. Brandon, just pay. You're going to do it. So do it.
Just rip the Band-Aid off. And it's like, all this extra dancing, all this extra posturing, you're wasting reps. You're wasting valuable opportunities. You're more likely to come back and get banged up because you're not in the proper condition to be playing a full, intense game of contact football. It's just, yeah, I can't say enough negative things about the way that just all of this stuff is being handled. Like, I mean, I actually was into the whole running back movement, right? The pro get the running backs paid more. Like, they were totally underpaid and it was BS. And I loved that they staged they had the Zoom call and they had the hold-ins and they all made money. But the receivers have never been underpaid, especially not now. Receivers, if anything, respectfully, are criminally overpaid. And this, to me, just screams entitlement. And, whatever. I'm pro player. I'm pro get your bag, but I'm anti bad teammate, bad leader. And that's what this is screaming to me.
I think it'll be, so Jamar Chase will be seeking $35 million on $1, like just $1 above Justin Jefferson. And that's the kind of hold up. And we talked about this last week, I think. Like, that's the agent's power as well, because the agent wants to say, I got you the highest paid contract in the league.
Yep.
That's
absolutely
their resume. It's like, it's a whole bunch of politics that go into it.
Yep.
And if you're a Bengals fan, you're like, just get the guy. Like, we haven't had a healthy offseason with Joe Burrow. He's always been injured since his rookie year. Get these guys together, give them a proper offseason program, and give us another, like, a run to get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they could too. They're that good. So if we're doing this, then it definitely the vibes are a bit bad in Cincinnati. I'll just say that. Chris, anything else on this before we move on?
I guess 2 things I'll say. Just like, the Bengals are historically bad at paying their players, so it's no surprise to me, right? T. Higgins is also waiting for a contract, and they're basically just like, yeah, no thanks. You're just going to play out your franchise tag. The other thing is, like, what I've heard is, right, when they're negotiating these player contract or the CBA, it's 32 owners versus 2,000 players. So you have to meet the needs of 2,000 players versus meeting the needs of 32 guys, right? The owners have such a strong arm on the negotiations that it's so hard to get anything done. And I think the biggest thing that these players are fighting for is just, we should be getting paid in our prime, and you're telling us that our rookie contract doesn't get to be part of that. But when you're a talent like Jamar Chase, when you're a talent like Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, or a couple other guys, and then, we're going to see it with Marvin Harrison. We're going to see it with Malik Neighbors. These guys are so good right out of college. They want to be paid. And now we're seeing colleges pay their players significant money. So there's going to end up being this battle where they say, okay, if you're not going to pay me what I think I deserve, I'm I'm just going to stay in college, right? The other thing is when you're negotiating Jamar Chase's contract, do you say he gets $35,001 this year, or are you saying he gets it in 2 years when his rookie deal expires, right? So I think there's a little bit of that at play here too, where they're like, we've already booked our contracts this year. We can't afford 35 million on the books. So we'll pay you that in 3 years, but Jamar might be saying, no, I want it now.
Yeah, those cap gymnastics are quite the demon to overcome, and that's that can be construed both ways. I've seen cap gymnastics, feed families, and I've seen cap gymnastics, like straight up rob people of money they earned. So,
Yeah.
it's a really good point, Chris, and it's something that I think we don't think about. It's super it's so granular. It's so getting into the contract stuff, man. Like that is just not. That's not. I have a base understanding of it, but it's not my cup of tea. I just think let's play ball, man. It's all very ugly stuff. But it's a fair point that players like Chase who perform at an all-pro level really right out of college. The rookie contract thing doesn't really necessarily take into account just how good or dominant or top of their position they'll be. And that's something that, it's interesting, right? Do you say, oh, go pay your dues because it's the way of the world? Or do you say, let's fix that. Let's get them paid a little bit better out of the gate. Interesting debate. Tough to really put a finger on. Adrian, anything else before we sew it up?
Nah, I think you guys covered it. I won't add into it. Just pay the guy like for the second time today.
Pay him.
Like seriously,
he deserves some money.
Pay him, but it's also like, I mean, geez, he's the deal he's probably turning down is probably generational, I would assume.
That is very true. And sorry, I said I had nothing else to say. Now I'm going to add more. I was kind of reading something recently about the positional value and all that sort of stuff, and like tight ends, how they're not historically, like generally lower paid, but they have to block like a tackle, they have to catch like a receiver, and they kind of play both roles. It's funny how like a wide receiver will be toying up over 33, 34, 35 million dollars a year. And then like a tight end or a running back comes in, probably offer some tight ends, running backs offer just as much, and they would not even sniff like into the 20s,
Yeah, it's
crazy.
So wild, and it's just the way of the position and the way of the NFL and the current like financial landscape. Is it fair? No. Is it reality? Yes, unfortunately. Because quarterbacks, I mean, look at their contracts. Like, dude, Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa are like the highest, and Jordan Love, who's had one good year, respectfully to two Packers fans, he's the highest paid player in NFL history.
Why are you going to take shots?
Really?
You know what? Actually,
it's not even a shot. It's crazy, regardless.
But what I would say about that is not Jordan Love specifically, because he's obviously the GOAT. No, quarterback positional value. So if you look at like what a wide receiver does to like an elite tight end or an elite left tackle or an elite running back versus what a quarterback does, like Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl last year with middling wide receivers across the board. Name the last Super Bowl champion that had a middling quarterback.
Yeah. Middling is generous.
I was going to say the Giants, but just to take a shot, but
still. No. Last thing I'll say, because I just had this thought. Huge NBA fan. Chris, you follow the NBA?
Yeah.
Huge NBA fan. I'm a huge New York Knicks fan. And Jalen Brunson just signed a contract, 4 years, $160 million a year or something like that. He's getting paid $40 million a year. Had he waited 1 year, he would have been eligible for like a 5-year, $260 million contract where he would have gotten paid $60 million a year, something along those lines. I'm using rough estimate numbers. I don't know them exactly, but he's gotten kind of lambasted a little bit in the media saying, oh, he's leaving money on the table. Does he not understand that it's the organization and it's the corporate structure and yada, yada. But it's like, bro, you think he's hurting? You think he's hurting at $40 million a year? Poor guy. How will his newborn baby eat? Like freaking Josh Allen. They're asking him. He's the 13th highest paid quarterback in the league. They're asking him, "Oh, do you feel underpaid?" He makes $50 million a year.
I loved his answer. Actually, Josh Allen's answer was awesome to that. When I asked if you like,
it's beautiful. Yeah, of course it was awesome. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, but exactly though. Like, so perspective, right? Like, there's both sides of it, right? Like, you gotta, and that's one thing we always try to do on the show. there's the power to the player. We don't mess around. We advocate for that stuff, but at the same time, there's two sides to every coin, and we got to be thinking about like they're eating good. Don't worry about them.
Brunson's answer was awesome too. He said, he studied Mahomes and Brady's contracts and said, how did these guys win championships, right? And like he's like, it's when the money's kind of distributed more evenly amongst the team, and you have good players around you, right? I don't think Brunson thinks of himself as like a LeBron where he can just run it himself and be
right,
win like that. So like, I actually loved his answer, and hopefully more people start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, studying the greats and studying the way that these things come about, the way that I believe it was also players like Derek Jeter and players like Tom Brady. Yeah, he wants to be that for New York. He wants to be that that catalyst for a bunch of championships. And I feel the same way about. I think Josh Allen's the same thing. I couldn't be happier being those being my two favorite teams, having Brunson and Allen at the helm. It's really quite. I feel quite spoiled. Yeah, we got some interesting answers from Titan Maximum in the chat. 49ers. Armand, I'm sorry about the Reddick situation. That's just
so hard.
Absolutely brutal. Without further ado, Jahan Dotson was traded to Philadelphia. Yada yada. Adrian loves Howie Roseman.
I just deleted the Howie drop as well.
What's the 1 to 10 on the scale of the Howie meter of like a third round pick for Jahan Dotson?
I mean, like, look, you know what I'll say is,
and like a 5 personally.
Yeah, but it's not a massive trade or anything. It's not like they needed him. But like as far as value, he's a bit depleted, Jahan Dotson, but he's not nobody. It's weird that the Commanders traded him away. I feel like you hold on to pieces. Even him, like I'm going to bring up their depth chart now. Who are they? Who's behind? Who's taking his spot? I don't know.
Dyami Brown, I believe.
Okay, that's not terrible, I suppose.
It's all right.
And they got Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah, I've been hearing negative reports about him. I've been hearing that he hasn't made his way into the top 4 on the depth chart, even with the departure of Dotson, which is unfortunate because I got faith in him. I think he'll be all right.
The ESPN depth chart has Terry McLaurin number 1, of course, my boy. Olamide Zaccheaus, then Luke McCaffrey, then Dyami Brown. So my point being is that, like, I don't think you should take away pieces when you've got a rookie quarterback, even if they're gonna play 20% of snaps. Like,
that's fair.
But I guess a third rounder, like, you're gonna need something for next year. But I would say Howie. I don't know if this is like one of those moments where a heart emoji over Howie, but it's still, it's him making moves.
I'm a big tinfoil hat guy, and I just think that they did this so that they could get Brandon Ayuk on Washington. I think that's why they did it. Extra draft picks, right? So.
I mean, that's not bad, and that would be cool. That would be really, really cool. I would be a huge advocate of that, and you might find out why in a second. But regardless, let's just be realistic here before we move on. A third round pick for a player who was a second round pick, or was he a first round pick? I forget.
First round pick, I think.
Was he a first round pick 2 years ago though, right? With pretty depreciated value. That feels like the Eagles pay a third round pick for Jahan Dotson. That feels like they overpaid a little bit, if I'm being totally honest.
I think it was a third and a fifth as well. So like multiple picks.
Yeah, but it was a first rounder in 2022.
He was a first rounder. Yeah. So maybe you're thinking about maybe you have that 5th year option if he is great, but you already have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith locked up. Whatever. I digress. I think it was an overpayment. No worries. Howie's still really good. Without further ado, Adrian. It is now time for our main topic. And today, Brian McFadden coming in, friend of the show. Just kidding. Literally the show. He is the show. Yeah. I mean, obviously, they should, right? Like, I couldn't believe when they signed. So, Titan Maximum says Niners should keep Ayuk if they're going to move on from a receiver. I would trade Debo. I said that when they extended Debo, correct? Adrian, I said, why would you extend Debo when you haven't extended Ayuk yet? Because I'd rather have Ayuk than Debo. That's just where that's from where I'm sitting.
Even pre-draft, you mentioned that if you're going to trade someone for pieces, send Debo. Yeah.
Especially since they drafted Ricky Pearsall. I like him. I can't wait to see what he turns into. So
I think the Niners are close to a deal, though. From what I read, like it was like they've got a deal on the table that's acceptable. That's what, like I just feel like
doesn't it feel like we get a new version of that story every day though, and it's like. Commanders were out. Now they're back in after the Niners are just about to close the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
What is it? Who's telling the truth? Someone's lying.
This is kind of like an off-season story every single season, and 99% of the time the team will hold on to their guy that they should be holding on to, because Brandon Ayuk is not someone you should let go.
That's how I feel.
But yeah, like, look, we might get a surprise. Who knows? And I like Chris's conspiracy. I really actually hope that happens. That would be awesome.
Pretty awesome. Pretty
Mhm.
awesome. Nevertheless, we have my favorite legit football annual episode, the off-season darling episode. And we're going to start off with Chris, since it's his first time here. We each picked 2 teams, and we're going to whittle it down to 1 on the air. So a little bit of building the plane as we fly it, as you guys know we like to do. So without further ado, Chris, off-season darling, we're looking at teams who underperformed last year, were downright terrible last year, had maybe some good offseason moves, maybe some bad ones, but the public perception is not that they are this great team, that they will go far, but we believe in them.
Sorry, guys.
They're losers, according to Jimmy Ray of NFL Voice. But to us, there are darlings. And Chris, I'll let you take it away with your 2 picks.
Yeah, going first is tough. I had a really hard time with this because I'll be honest, I don't know if there's a team like maybe somebody you guys picked last year. Who was it?
Oh, so I picked the Texans last year when they had nothing, when they were being considered they were going to be the first overall pick. They traded away their first rounder. Everybody's like, oh, why would you trade the first rounder? It's going to be first overall. I was like, man, they're making the playoffs.
You crushed it.
They did.
You crushed it. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if that team exists this year. I'm just going to be straight up, like, right? But I'm going to do my best.
They do, and they're mine. But go ahead. Go ahead. Do your best.
You'll have to sell me.
Go ahead.
The 2 I came up with were the.
Are we calling that 2.5? Sorry, Chris, I'm going to interrupt you. Was that a second? Is that a second?
It's close.
Oh, I think I know what it is.
Yeah, I'm calling it. Hold on a second. This is what you missed at the start of the show.
I baited you a little.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you, man. That's an easy over, bro. 2.5 was a low line, bro. You should have started at like 4.
I didn't want to. Oh, yeah. I knew it was going to go over. I think that's what everyone picked over.
Hey, I just saw the comments. Everybody, 2. I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay. Sorry, Chris.
I interrupted.
I love it.
We'll let you cook.
And that was my fault anyway. I baited you. Jaguars and Titans were the 2 teams that I am choosing between, and for very different reasons, honestly. So I was super upset with the Titans and the way that they handled the coaching situation, firing what I thought was a top coach in the NFL in Mike Vrabel. Every year, he's fantastic, right? Every single year, that team is competitive because of that coach with subpar players. So the offseason didn't start with me rooting for this team, but then they went and hired Brian Callahan, who has done a phenomenal job as an OC in Cincinnati, right? Since 2019, with Burrow and Chase coming in and Higgins, he's built that team and built that identity. If you've ever listened to me speak before, you know I'm not a Zach Taylor guy. So I think it was heavily because of Callahan. I also like them going the offensive mind way instead of the defensive coach, which they traditionally did. The young quarterback needs to learn, needs to do some things right this year. He's dealt with injuries with Will Levis. But the one thing I loved about Levis last year is his ability to stay in the pocket in the face of pressure and deliver throws. He did that so well. So if this guy can just not take on hit sticks every week, I think he can stay healthy. And I also like when a team decides, hey, we have this young, inexperienced quarterback. We're not just going to be like the Bears and just give them nothing, right? We're going to set him up with Hopkins. We're going to set him up with Calvin Ridley. We're going to put some experienced vets around him. Even if those are like team building things I wouldn't do, I at least like that it's helping the young quarterback so that 2-3 years down the road, when you're ready to really start winning, you can do that. But I like the direction they're going in. And the biggest thing about the Callahan hiring that sticks out is that his dad's coming with him. And if you don't know who his dad is, he's like the best offensive line coach in football. And they went and drafted J.C. Latham, who is one of my favorite prospects. They already had Peter Skoronski. They added Lloyd Cushenberry to that offensive line. So they're building protection. They're giving this guy weapons. And it looks like there's opportunity where this is going from bottom 5 team in the NFL, where they wouldn't surprise me if they ended up winning 9 games. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. And I think that's a really nice thing for a young team with a young quarterback to do. But I am leaning with my other team, which is the Jags. And typically I hate the Jags, and I hate the way that they build their team. The way they do it, it's usually, hey, nobody wants to play for us, so we're going to have to overpay everybody to come here. And just an example of that is Christian Kirk, who in 2022 signed a massive contract. He was a top 5 paid receiver, and last year he was the 45th highest graded player according to PFF. He was 57th in touchdowns, 45th in receptions. So just for context, Gabe Davis is also making $17 million a year in 2026. Like, they sign guys to terrible contracts. Darnell Savage, Tyson Campbell, I could go on and on, right? But this year might be different, right? Doug Peterson took a 3-14 Jags to a 9-8 season last year. And honestly, I think that's the floor of what this team could achieve now. They added the best receiver that Trevor Lawrence will ever play with in Brian Thomas Jr., and they added Eric Armstead to the defense. I think they needed a veteran presence on that defense. So I really like that. So I'm leaning Jags, but you guys tell me, where would you go with this?
I think you did a phenomenal job laying out both cases. Virtual round of applause for Chris from All 22 for just absolutely really lawyering us, honestly. Truthfully, like, and he was both sides of he was both lawyers. He was the defense and the prosecution, and I think you did a great job. I know you made Titan Maximum happy. He's one of our weekly listeners, and he started the show off by saying, one of you better make your team the Titans. So, Chris, thank you for making one of our regulars happy. What you talked about with Will Levis, we call that isolating the variable on this podcast, and they did a great job doing it. I personally, I think Calvin Ridley's a little overhyped, but he's a good receiver. I mean, he's better than what they had. DeAndre Hopkins is over the hill, but he has a game that will age well. Chigakonkwo, is he great? Time will tell. I personally think Tony Pollard's being slept on, given that he only had one season where he wasn't great. I think he was looked at as a very good running back prior to his injury. So I don't love the Tony Pollard hate, but I'm happy that they also have Tajay Spears. So even if Tony Pollard's not that great, Tajay Spears is pretty good. So I think, like you said, a lot better of an O-line this year is anticipated. A lot better of a defense. So they went out and picked up homie from Kansas City, the corner, I forget.
Jarius Sneed, yeah.
Yeah, who I absolutely hate. Jarius Sneed, great player. I hate him less now that he's not a Chief. I hate the Chiefs, by the way, all 22, Chris. I give a lot of respect to him, but I hate him.
Peppered with hate.
We'll have to talk about that more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a therapy thing. We'll have to dive into it. It's, that and yeah. So anyways, it's Bills fan. We have a lot of trauma. I like the pick of the Jags as well. I think it's a little deeper down the barrel. It's a little safer of an offseason darling team. They were, on the doorstep of the playoffs last year, but their collapse was so monumental, and the public perception has turned on them so much that I'm actually super on board with it being an eligible pick, and I'm excited to see which of the two you narrow it down to. Your case for both was great. I think the Jags will come back this year. I think they'll go wild card for sure. I think they're being left for dead, and I don't think they should be. So I think if in a vacuum, I think the Jags will have a better season than the Titans.
Yeah, I've publicly been against the Titans on this show, and I feel like Chris, your breakdown there was actually really good and kind of turned me a little bit, just a little bit. My thing on the whole Pollard running back, and I agree with you, Kevin. Yeah, one bad year, but it was kind of the year he was meant to be the dude. Like, he was good as RB2, kind of like actually a little bit like Alexander Madison. They put him in the lead role, and he just kind of flailed. And so I like Tajay Spears. I think he should do better. The Jags kind of downfall, if I remember right, was right about when Trevor Lawrence was playing through a high ankle sprain. Not an easy thing to do, but that was a lot of the talk about why it might happen. So I could see them being closer to their first half of the season this year. I could see them being better. Eric Armstead is a good add. I know they added Mitch Morse and Ezra Cleveland, I think, to the offensive line. Good running back room. I like the Jags. I think the Jags is a good pick.
Yeah. So, Chris, without further ado, narrow it down for us, man. Who's your offseason darling team?
I mean, all the smoke out here, I'm hearing that the Jags might have been a safe pick. I want to go Titans, but I think the graphic, I got to go Jags. I got to go Jags for the graphic. I'm going to go.
If
Jags.
it's for the graphic,
I can edit the
tell us,
graphic.
We can change it because
I have no skin on the line, right? Like
what do you mean
Titans,
you have
right?
no skin on line? What do you mean?
So
Like
Titans.
this is your reputation.
That's true, and I'm doing it for the Titans fan that's on the call.
There you go.
Titans.
Do it. Just do
Let's
it.
go.
Do it. All right.
All
He's
right.
the Titans.
Absolutely.
I will update the graphic. Kev, you wax
Adrian's gonna hit the graphic hard, and I'll wax poetic. I got a lot to say, but Chris, I'm proud of you, man. I think you made the bold choice. I think you made the brave pick.
Yeah.
And you, like I said, excellent job. Virtual round of applause. Adrian, do you have a round of applause sound effect that you can play for Chris?
I feel like I should have one on here, but
I feel like you do.
How do I say it?
Just for clarity, I actually work for a law firm as like my day job. I'm not a lawyer, but I negotiate things. So like,
okay.
No, you're
I'm
right.
not surprised. I feel good about that snipe. Then that
was pretty good.
That's like a Texans level snipe. Okay, so without further ado,
I've got a ding ding. Yeah, I had him.
Ding 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 will do. That'll do. He deserves it. Okay, so I have to be honest with you guys. I have to be transparent with you guys, okay? I was hoping for a big panel today. Pro Football Demon was unavailable. He told us his team. We'll tell you guys at the end of the show. Brian McFadden was unavailable. He told us his 2 teams. I'll tell you guys at the end of the show. Adrian picked some teams that I liked. He'll tell you towards the end of the show in a little bit. But there's a couple teams that I want to talk about in this spot, and I'll tell you why. And I'll end with my spiel. And once I spiel, you guys know I lock it in. That's my rule. No changing takes after spiels, Chris. I don't know if you've heard that before, but
I like it.
Adrian spieled and then tried to change his takes, and we don't allow that anymore.
Constantly. Habitual.
Panthers for the wild card, by the way, Chris. I don't know if you know that or not. Panthers for the wild card.
This upcoming season?
Talk to Adrian about it.
Hey, are they we'll talk about
I'm going to cut this, and this is going to get played wild card weekend.
Oh, please do. But I'm still, whatever. Adrian, you spieled, and it's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to pick the Patriots for this. I desperately, badly wanted to pick the Patriots for this. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not picking the Patriots, but I'm going to talk about them a little bit because I think they had some signs of a Texans-esque run. I liked their hire of Gerard Mayo as head coach. I love that they paid Ramondre Stevenson. I like the weapons that they added for their rookie quarterback, Drake May, who I also happen to love. I never thought the defense was the problem, and they have a defensive-minded head coach, but the vibes have been so bad, and, there's rumors of Drake May not even starting. Jacoby Brissett, he's been fine in spot starts in his career, but I don't really love the idea of hitching my wagon to a team that is starting Jacoby Brissett, who we know who they are at this point. I love Pop Douglas. I like some of their pieces on defense. Again, the vibes have been so bad this offseason, preseason, that I can't stick my neck out for the Patriots, but I want to give them a special shout out. I'm going to talk about the Jets, Armand. Our favorite listener, Armand Mosin, who's been a supporter of the show since I started, and long before, is the GOAT. And I dog the Jets. I actually make a habit out of it. I do it a couple times an episode. It's really not nice, especially since Armand is so supportive. But if the Jags qualify, I think the Jets absolutely qualify. They're getting a healthier Aaron Rodgers back. I've already pointed out that he's 40 years old and coming off of a torn Achilles. I don't need to remind you guys of that, but they have Garrett Wilson. They have Breece Hall. I think Tyler Conklin's underrated. Their O-line should be better this year, and their defense is one of the top 3 defenses in the NFL. I still don't see it coming together for them. I don't think Saleh's a good head coach, but their season was so bad last year and so abysmal that almost anything will be a step forward, which is really partly what you're forecasting with the offseason darling team. So I'll give some love to the Jets as well. Guys, I have a question for you. Defensive-minded head coach, right? Coming off of a season where you lose 13 games, right? Picking a stud QB in the top 5, who has a lot of question marks, according to some, and to some, there aren't any. Does that sound familiar to you? Does it? Because it
Vaguely.
should.
Vaguely.
The Houston Texans last year. But that's not who I'm talking about.
If you hadn't hit the over, that's the over.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
the Washington Commanders this year with Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels coming off of a 13-win season. Look, it's not going to be popular, okay? People are, I might get canceled for this. People are not into the Commanders this year. There's not a lot of buzz. Austin Eckler's old and washed, right? They just traded away Jahan Dotson. Brian Robinson Jr. is boring, right? Terry McLaurin is one of the best receivers in the NFL. I personally think Ben Sinnott is going to be one of the best tight ends in the NFL in a couple of seasons. I really like him. I think Dan Quinn will do wonders for the defense, which already wasn't that bad. The stink of the team is Cliff Kingsbury, and I can't really do anything about that. There's no cologne strong enough to wash off that scent. But you know what? Sometimes you make it part of your wardrobe. There's this thing in Japanese pottery where if you crack a pot, you form the rest of the pot around the crack to be beautiful. Cliff Kingsbury is the crack, if I'm being honest. But not enough of a crack that it scares me away from picking the Washington Commanders as my official offseason darling team. Wild card incoming. Sorry, not sorry. I'm not afraid.
Good pick. I mean, I talked about the Commanders being on
I
my.
didn't mean to actually drop it.
Did
you guys hear that? We good? Okay.
No, heard nothing. Family friendly show. Yeah.
I did curse. I'm sorry. Told you, Chris.
No. No, I like the pick. I absolutely consider the Commanders for myself as well. They really, I mean, if you take out the loss of Montez Sweat, which I won't count as this offseason because it was during the season, they only really lost Curtis Samuel, and they have added new coach, new owner, Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Zach Ertz. There's more to that. Like they've really strung up the team. Strung up is not the correct term, but I'm babbling.
Short up.
And I think short up is the word I'm looking for. The only real weakness their defense had was the run last year. They were ranked 31st in run defense. But other than that, I think the Commanders looking good. And I would argue that, and I'm going to cop some hate here because I know Bears think they are Packers fan, but I would argue that Jaden Daniels has looked the most consistent in preseason and in camp.
Caleb's looked damn good, though. Caleb's looked damn
in
good.
flashes. Absolutely, he's had some pieces, but I'm just like, as far as quick decision making and consistent decision making, Caleb Williams last week came out of the gates very weak, and then he picked up, and that's what you want from a rookie QB.
Right.
You don't want they're not going to be lights out, but I would just argue that Jaden Daniels has looked the best so far. I'm sure Caleb will be fantastic. He's done some like bonkers throws and whatever, Bears, blah blah blah. But
yeah, you just hate them.
It's very hard for me to just even throw any love their way.
Yeah, Chris, what are your thoughts, man? We had a little rant there. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I love the pick. I think you made a great argument. It's probably, I don't want to say the best offseason pick to take. It's really good, but the only thing that's hard about the Commanders is the division they play in, right? Like they have some hard matchups week to week with the Eagles and the Cowboys. The only other thing is like the edge rushers are just real poor. You want to get after the quarterback in this NFL, right? That's like the name of the game today is you have to throw the ball down the field and you need to tackle the guy throwing the ball. And they're going to struggle with the second part of that. So I worry that they're not going to get over the hump for that reason, just playing, again, games against the Cowboys and Eagles. But damn, Jaden Daniels has been awesome. So I'm pumped about him, and I'm pumped about that pick.
Yeah, super into Jaden Daniels, man. He's an exciting young player. And again, I ranted about I feel like I very much Little Red Riding Hooded my pick because I had the Pats, which was just too spicy. I had the Jets, which just wasn't spicy enough, and then I had the Commanders, which was just right. So I digress. Adrian,
no, Goldilocks principle. I like it.
Oh, was it Goldilocks? I thought it was Little Red Riding Hood. No, Little Red Riding Hood got eaten by a grandma. I am tripping. Who was actually a wolf? Okay, we're back. Yeah. Okay, Adrian, go ahead, man.
We're good.
Hey, do you have a graphic, Adrian? What are you doing?
That's okay. Scab producing. I had deleted the original file once I uploaded graphics, so I can't do it. I should have just kept my mouth shut.
No stress. It is what it is.
Thanks for calling me out publicly, though. That
have to. Good. You're welcome.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
My first take my first originally where I was going to go, I went this way because it's the not spicy enough, right? So I originally looked at the Falcons. Like, let's look at the upside, right? So there's no Arthur Smith there anymore to ruin that game, and they had all these weapons that they had these previous years that are hopefully going to be unlocked now. Like Bijan Robinson is not going to be going, but it's not going to be like a 50-50 split with Tyler Algier anymore. So that was great. They've got the easiest strength of schedule by a long shot in the NFL as far as like strength of schedule ranking. Kirk Cousins, we've spoken enough about that. Like we've spoken that to death on this show, but that is such an upgrade from Desmond Ridder. They've got Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. They got Antonio Hamilton. I know he's a bit of an older cornerback, but he was productive for the Cardinals, who I will talk about shortly. Teaser. And so you've taken all these weapons that I haven't even mentioned, like the Drake Londons of the world, the Kyle Pitts, and you put it with a quality QB. You get Matt Judon in there who can rush the passer, which is something they've historically not had for quite some time, right? Their offensive line looks fantastic. They've got probably, I would say, top 5 this year. And they've got continuity, which is like such a big factor in offensive line. They've got all 5 of their starting O-line back, which is great. The only reason I didn't go them genuinely is because I feel like they're not Cinderella enough. Like they're a little bit too milquetoast. You know what I mean? To pick
Milk
the Falcons,
toast,
and they
love
also
that.
yeah. It's actually becoming a weekly like
It's a great term.
Yeah, it is. So where I want to, which I teased earlier, was the Cardinals. So for me, the Cardinals. All right, I feel like they're being slept on, and I feel like they could be this year's Texans. This is the last time Kyler Murray played. Let me try that again with regular English. This is the last full season Kyler Murray played. 4,000 yards passing, 800 yards rushing, 37 touchdowns, including the ones he rushed in, and 12 interceptions. That was 2019. 2020 put up similar stats, 14 games played, about half the rushing yards. And then he sort of went and he's sort of gone. And that was that year there was like, oh, he's too interested in games and this and that. And like all this sort of hullabaloo that took him off the radar. And then he got injured. And then he came back from his injury last year. Now, I'm not saying he was amazing, but he also came back to a new system, a new coach, like without any preseason, no weapons, like a terrible, terrible defense. In fact, if I'm not wrong, they might have been ranked 31st or 32nd overall as a defense. They come back. He's got a full offseason to get healthy. He's got Marvin Harrison Jr., which is probably the number 1 receiving prospect we've seen out of college. Is that a fair statement? Number 1 we've ever seen as far as prospects go?
I don't think it's crazy. I think
Yeah.
there's probably cases for other guys, but I don't think it's
absolutely. It's a fair call, right? As in you wouldn't be calling that's not a hot take.
Right.
The biggest thing they lost in free agency was probably Marquise Brown. They've got Marvin Harrison to come back over that. They've got James Conner. You might not know this, finished 2nd in yards per carry last year. Like he was dominant last year. Thank you, 49ers faithful. Lockstep. It's nice to have a partner on this show, someone that doesn't tear me down publicly. So they got that kind of pick your poison offense. You got James Conner. They brought in Trey Benson. They're going to be able to ground and pound until you give Marvin Harrison a little bit of space, and then they're going through the air. They got Trey McBride there. They defensively they brought in a lot of so in free agency they brought in Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones. They brought Sean Murphy Bunting, and then they used 3 top 90 picks on their defense. So as far as their starters, they've got 50% new players, 6 out of 12 new players on their defense. So I'm in on the Cardinals this year. I was sort of tiptoeing my way in. I wasn't sure about Marvin Harrison as in. I know he was fantastic, but I was a bit of a Rome Odunze guy. But after sort of doing a bit of research, and you know what? Yeah, and the thing is as well, I think like a lot of people, it's just stuff you forgot what Kyler Murray could do when he was healthy. He was like, if you guys remember, he was like MVP frontrunner for the first 3 quarters of the season. He was fantastic. So thank you for the banner. Is that
like
that your work, Kevin? Yeah,
I did do that. No, Chris did that.
Someone's
actually. He
got
went
to
rogue.
drop it. Yeah. So my pick is the Cardinals. I'll shut up now, but that's where I'm going. What do you boys think?
Yeah, fantastic pick. I mean, Kyler Murray has gone so far in the wrong direction in people's minds of how bad they think he is, but they forget when he plays football, he absolutely balls. Like this dude is as talented as anybody. He's just like 5'10", right? So it's a little difficult. And as long as Call of Duty doesn't come out, he should be fine.
That part.
Otherwise, like I love what they did with that offense. Getting rid of Cliff Kingsbury is, that's 3 wins right there. And then, the defense, that's really all that's left to fix, is just making sure that defense is good. And you just said, right, 6 new starters on defense. I like Darius Robinson a lot, the edge rusher they drafted. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, nope. I got nothing but love for the pick, Adrian. They were floated around in my mind. I think the defensive concerns are probably a bit too rampant for me. I don't think they'll have a problem scoring. I think they'll have a problem stopping teams. So I think that maybe has to do a little bit with why I didn't consider them more heavily. Also knowing that they were just your boys, so I wasn't going to touch them, kind of thing. But I think, and I love the pick of the Falcons too. I think similar to Chris's Jags pick and my Jets pick, the perception has turned enough. People know the Falcons are going to be good this year. I think. I personally, I don't know. I don't think that's a hot take. I think Kirk is good. Again, the quarterback off the Achilles sucks, but the weapons are just, talk about a stacked cupboard, man. That's like grocery day. You went to Whole Foods, and mom also picked up takeout on the way home. Like, it's that kind of level of stacked. Honestly,
can I ask a question to Adrian, since like I don't get this much airtime with a Packer fan, but
let it rip.
I'm guessing it's me.
Yes. Oh shoot!
Oh wait, no, yeah, Adrian's
now.
frozen. He's frozen. I think
man.
he said somebody's frozen. I guess it's me. I think that's what he said right before. And great face to freeze on, by the way.
I thought it was like he was so scared of the question I was about to ask that he just was like, I'm out.
You know what? And you know what? Ask me first. When he comes back, we can ask him together. He'll come right back. I'm pretty confident. But let it rip.
So yeah, like I went through the Aaron Rodgers years where every year they were drafting players that didn't really help him in the present.
Hold that thought. He's back. You can ask us both now.
I missed all of that because you said I'm gonna ask Adrian a question and then it froze.
Yeah,
and it's frozen again. Oh, I know.
I can see you.
Really still, you're good.
Oh, you're good, Adrian?
Yeah, we're good.
Let's
good.
Go.
Australian
okay,
internet.
Chris, let it rip. Dude. Australian internet is terrible, Chris. I don't know if you know that or not.
I don't. I know very little about Australia.
I think he's frozen again.
Damn. I'm gonna ask you, Kevin.
Yeah, please. No, let it rip. I'm here for you.
We struggled with the Aaron Rodgers years. They wouldn't draft him a receiver year over year, right? And it got kind of weird. And then they drafted the replacement instead of giving him help, right? It ends up working out long term. But did we potentially miss out on a Super Bowl or two that we could have had we helped him? Now with like Atlanta going and getting Kirk and then drafting Penix, we talked about how they didn't really have an edge rusher. Dallas Turner was on the clock. Like, did they do the right thing? Did they not do the right thing? I was for the pick because of like the continuity plan of quarterbacks, but it's weird.
The Penix pick?
I like the Penix pick a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. That's perfect. I'm so glad that Adrian was here in time for that because that's a hot take. Mm-hmm. Adrian, we're going to ask you in a second. I'm just going to really quickly respond to Chris.
I'll probably drop out.
No doubt. Exactly. You'll be gone in a second anyway. Chris, no doubt you guys missed out on a Super Bowl. At least one, maybe two.
So?
I think so personally. I'm not mad at it in hindsight because you got one. I think once you get one, you can kind of be a lot more conservative with your strategies. But until that Band-Aid's ripped off, until that starving fan base is fed, I don't think it's fair to plan so far ahead for the future. The Falcons don't have one either. And they're already thinking about the post-Kirk Cousins days. Well, what if there's a great QB next year or the year after Kirk retires and you have a high draft pick? Are you going to take another one or does Penix go to the wayside? You could have had Dallas Turner. You could have had Rome Odunze. Instead, you have a backup quarterback, essentially, right? Like but it did work out for you guys with Jordan Love, and hopefully that turns into another ring. And then they'll draft Jordan Love's successor when he's too young, just like they did with Favre, just like they did with Rodgers, and the cycle will continue. But I'll let the Packers fans do the Packers fan thing and go ahead and ask Adrian one more time.
Yeah, Adrian, dude, hopefully I don't break you again. But
seriously.
Would you have rather they drafted receivers to help Rodgers, or are you happy now in hindsight, right, with the Jordan Love pick? Like, would you have rather the potential of reaching another Super Bowl or two, or the opposite?
It's, you know what, it's hard because it's hard to separate the hindsight, right? So right now, I'm so happy because we've got Jordan Love. He seems like the dude, and the Packers, as I'm sure you're aware, like they've always done well of turning receivers out of third-round picks, fourth-round picks. So I'm happy with the way they went now in hindsight. And if I could choose to have Jordan Love now or one additional ring in the Rodgers era and a sort of Joe Nobody at quarterback, I'd probably pick Jordan Love now because I feel like we're going to get a ring with him. That's the optimist in me.
You had the chance at an additional ring. I know he's frozen again. You had the chance at an additional ring and you turned it down for the chance at a future ring, I don't know about that one.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
tough.
about I
It's
don't know
tough.
about that one.
My
Yeah,
friends hate me because I say like we had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. We had 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterbacks and only 2 Super Bowls to show for it. Like it's kind of atrocious, right? Like that's terrible history.
yeah, but not really though. Because it's 2 rings, right?
Yeah, that's what they hate me for.
Like
Yeah.
I would always say, like as a Bills fan, trust me, bro. Like we'll sell our souls for one.
Yeah. Mhm.
And Satan, if you're listening, I didn't mean that, but you know what I mean. Like there are Bills fans who do mean it though. Like they really will sell their soul, and I just think like, you gotta just. I think you gotta just do what you can to get one, and then once you have one, the equation changes. But until you have one, the pursuit is get one, right?
Yeah.
And that
Your
just
take, that's a new take. Like I had never heard it said that way, and I'm happy I asked the question because I really
cool.
appreciated your response.
Word. Hey, I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, because that's just how. I mean, maybe that's because most of the sports fans you talk to are so privileged and they just have so many championships. Like I come from a place of borderline poverty, despite the awesome history of the Buffalo Bills. Regardless, I will get to Adrian will be in and out. Hopefully, he's in sooner than later, and hopefully he can close out the show with us because we miss him terribly. But if not, no biggie. Me and Chris got it on lock. I got a couple more offseason darling teams to throw out there. The co-founder and chief content creator, whatever you want to call Brian McFadden of Legit Football. His official picks, his unofficial pick was the Cardinals. He's also attached to Adrian, but his bona fide, like say it with his chest pick, is the Denver Broncos.
Mm.
And given the hype that we're seeing Bo Nix get right now, and given the weapons that they have and the likelihood that Sean Payton will be better this year than he's been in the past, I don't hate the pick, Chris. I don't hate the pick.
I think it's awesome. And it would be so cool if it happened because I don't think there's ever been a team with a dead cap that the Broncos have. I know you're not like the cap guy, but like the Russell cap hit is insane. So to win with that would change the game, right? Everybody would start trying to do that.
And I don't know why teams don't do that more often. When a quarterback sucks,
Yeah.
And it's not going to get fixed with just waiting and hoping that it gets fixed. I thought the Bills did a good job with the Stephon Diggs trade. Dead cap is a giant pill.
Mhm.
And I think you have to swallow it sooner than later. Take the pain, take the slightly weakened roster now. And the rest I think will follow, hopefully in a good way. But you're right. We've never seen a team with a dead cap hit like Denver do well, but I think they totally could. I think they totally could. Bo Nix he looks good. Sean Payton saying he's the next Drew Brees. Let's pump the brakes. But he looks good. He looks good.
We just got to hope he's not the next Mac Jones, right? Because like these quarterbacks in the preseason always do well, and we need to just let's see him in week 1, and then we'll start talking about it.
Am I the only one who never drank the Mac Jones Kool-Aid? I always thought he sucked, personally.
I always thought he sucked, but I mean, I passed on him in a draft once, and it really hurt. So
because he did end up doing okay for a season or two, but man, in my opinion, I just never thought he had the traits to be a successful NFL quarterback. Like, if you aren't super cerebral and you also can't fit a ball in a tight window, it's a bad combo. And that's what we saw time and time again with Mac Jones and his turnovers. Last but not least, Pro Football Demon, friend of the show, one of the GOATs, the Raiders are his pick. I don't think that's that crazy given how great of a job Antonio Pierce did. They were 7-10 last year. That's kind of like a weird, like when you hear people say that, like people almost can't believe that they won 7 games because of how bad the vibes were. But Antonio Pierce turned the ship around. Gardner Minshew almost took the Colts to the playoffs last year. Chris, where do the Raiders rank for you with the offseason darling teams? How do you feel about that pick?
I've been throwing so much shade at the Raiders lately, but I will say that they're finding their identity, which I love. That's my favorite thing in an offseason is hey,
absolutely,
you have a gritty head coach.
Yep.
How do you build a team with that? It's okay, let's get Jackson Powers Johnson, who's also crazy gritty, right? They have this
JPJ.
They have this angry offensive line.
Yep.
Minshew's the starting quarterback. Can it get grittier than that? That's awesome.
Does not get grittier.
And then you had Christian Wilkins as the defensive interior, who's a nightmare to go against, right? And line him next to Max Crosby. There's a lot of fun to be had with this team. Will they actually be good? I don't know. but it's at least finding an identity that I think they can build with and move forward with.
Yeah, I absolutely love the take, bro. And yeah, I think the Raiders deserve some love for this. I think they probably would have been consideration for me for my backup team. They were never going to touch the Commanders. But I think that they have the right sauce to be what it takes to qualify for this team. It's a little too deep down the barrel for me personally. That I probably wouldn't, stake my reputation on the Raiders being good next year, but I could totally see it. A running game, a good defense, and just outgritting teams, like you said, with that identity that they have. Chris, so before we wrap things up, and I think we might actually have Adrian back now for real. Adrian?
Maybe. Man, my internet just decided take a dirt nap and he's out.
I've been watching Adrian fight for his life in the lobby here. He's been in and out. It's almost like I feel like I just see him like him popping up in the chat is like him just sticking his head above water.
It's like the Titanic.
And he's
the Titanic scene.
So hard for us to save him, and we're just rows on the shift rope. We're like, nah, we don't got room.
You know that meme? I'm effectively the skeleton at the bottom of the pool. You got the kid at the hands, and then the one that's drowning. I'm the skeleton at this point.
Was absolutely you.
That
so
hurt.
you missed us doing McFadden and Demons teams. We have Broncos and Raiders. Hot takes.
Raiders. I said this. I want the Raiders to be good, but I don't think they will be. And I think Devontae Adams will be out the door or wanting a trade at the trade window. Broncos. Weird pick, but McFadden's normally ahead of the game on this thing. That was McFadden's pick, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, look, Bo Nix looked good. Looked good against the Packers. Maybe against our backups, whatever. But so I don't really have any. I don't have any hot takes. I like the ideas, and that's the whole point of an off-season team, right? They're meant to be not good.
Sup? That's my pops. What's up, Dad? And Titan Maximum is calling out PK Martini for his lack of timeliness. Actually, fun tidbit, Adrian. That Bills Cardinals game I'll be going to in a couple weeks. The home opener.
Ooh.
My father will be meeting me in Buffalo, and he's lived in Florida the last 5 years. I've lived in California, but we're linking up in Buffalo to catch a game. So,
Love it.
Shout out to Pops. So before we wrap things up, it's an hour 2 mark. So, we'll be tying a bow on this masterpiece chaotic episode as per usual for Legit Football. With Chris, really quick before you go and before we wrap things up, tell us about All 22, where people can sign up, how they can sign up, what it is, whatever you want to do. Really, the floor is yours, Chris.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'm going to say this like I'm talking to Adrian since I know he's doesn't play yet and I want him to.
There you go.
But All 22 it's the first and only fantasy football game to have full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen. You use PFF grades every single week. That's how you get your scoring instead of traditional statistics. And you set a personnel package too, right? So you get to choose 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 22. You get to choose nickel defense, 4-3, 3-4. So it's a really interesting game. It's totally different. It's kind of like as if you like playing Madden franchise mode and merge that with fantasy football. What's the best part of Madden? It's drafting your team, right? That's what All 22 is. You get to draft your team. You get to see the graphics. Instead of setting a lineup, you actually set a depth chart, just like in Madden, right? Just like real football. And yeah, that's what we try to do. We try to split the line between fantasy and real football and make it a little bit closer to the real thing.
And it's awesome. I can vouch for it. I'm going on to my second season of it. I have the Los Angeles Lavender. That's my team name. And we're trying to take home a championship this year. Adrian, I'd love for you to join. Everybody in the comments, Titan Maximum, PK, I believe 49ers Faithful. Somebody asked for a link earlier. Chris, maybe if you could comment a link just so people can find that.
Absolutely. So all-22.com, but in reality, the mobile app's available on the App Store, both Android, Google Play, whatever, and Apple. So go there, download it. The app seems to be pretty awesome so far, and I hope it works well for you.
I can vouch for that as well. I would recommend going to the app. I had the browser situation last year, and it was fine, right? Like it works. It's a website. The app is a game changer. I would heavily recommend downloading the app. But without further ado, Chris, excellent plug there. Really, really hope all of our listeners, 730 of you right now. Shout out to every single one of you. Appreciate you all for being here. Sorry that you missed Jimmy Ray. We miss him probably more than you do, to be completely honest with you. Did you just shrug, Adrian? It looked like you just shrugged.
No, I said that's fair. As in, Not like, why are you
look
trying
like
to
you're
drive a divide? You're trying to
Do I?
drive a divide between me and Jimmy Ray. I feel like you're trying to corner me.
Do I miss him?
How much so?
We
We could
got
have talked about Richardson. No,
Oh,
go.
exactly. Right. Shout out to PK, Titan Maximum, Armand, 49ers Faithful. This is my favorite show every year, and I think I can't wait to revisit the results in the playoffs and talk about how the Commanders and the Titans and the Cardinals and the Broncos and the Raiders all made it. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a really fun time. One of us is going to have egg on our face, but one of us will look like a genius. Special shout out to our listeners. Thank you. It was like 15. It was like absolutely 15. Adrian, anything you want to say to the good people before we sign off?
Nah, nothing, man. I appreciate everyone, and Chris, really good to have you here, man. I really genuinely hope to have you back. This has
Absolutely.
been a really fun show, except for the internet troubles at the end. But that's that's Australia for you.
That's Australia for you.
What do you do, man? Deadly
Um,
animals and bad internet.
I'm a man of the people. Titan Maximum, Texans. You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Kevin Phillip Fox. He's Adrian Revito. He's All 22 Chris. We're the Legit Football Podcast today and tomorrow and forever. And we are